Hey, what's going on, everybody? Andrew here, back for our build review show. It is Monday, September 23rd of 2024. This is our show where I bring users builds up live on stream, giving them personalized feedback and advice about things that I think they can do differently to help improve their post-contest sim ROIs and ultimately build and enter stronger lineups. We do this show Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern. It is Monday, so we have plenty of people signed up from over the weekend here. So it usually gets about 5 people per show here. I'm going to see how many people I can get through before the end of the show here. And then anybody that we weren't able to get to, we'll roll them into tomorrow's show. But plenty to talk about. So let's get SaberSim pulled up and let's jump right in. First person up is going to be Kelvin here, and we will get Kelvin up in 1 second. All right. And we're going to be covering NFL main slate reviews today. Looks like exclusively. Probably, tomorrow, next day, cover some showdowns for anybody playing some of the showdowns tonight. But anyways, let's get the screen up. And then let's hop back to yesterday. Main slate. So first thing here, right, playing a number of different slates. I think that's good. You can see all the different slates that this user played across the board here. Some MLB, some NFL, some showdowns, some classic slates. So I think that's all really good, right? Spreading that action out across multiple slates. It's always going to be a good thing. We'll stick with the DK main slate for our review. And let's pull this up. So pretty solid contest selection, right? We see free contests. We see low stakes. We see them balancing single entries in 3 max. This is really what you do want to see, right? So I mean, you can see like on this one slate, they get 350 down, and then this doesn't account for the other, 15 slates that they had today. So like, I think people underestimate how much bankroll you can get down at low stakes on an NFL Sunday, like across the board. So pretty solid contest selection here from Kelvin. All right. So let's stick with the quarter jukebox because I know this one typically works out pretty well for us as far as loading. We're still having trouble. I think like the $3.20 max and $1.20 max, possibly the mini max. Not 100% sure. I just know that the quarter ends up being very, very friendly. So, all right. Got this up. Going to hop over to users. Got Kelvin here. Enter 20 lineups. Going to set our filter. Sort by sim ROI. So, highest sim ROIs we're seeing in the contest, like 85 to 95% range. Kelvin is sitting at 46%. So, first off, positive. 45% is no small feat here. So that is really good. A little room for improvement, right? So I don't know how much we're going to see here on the home screen, but we might see a little something. So let's start here. Average salary looks pretty in line. Some ROI looks good. Uniqueness looks good. So the first and obvious thing that stands out to me, same average score, a little low, 134.6. A lot of these higher sets, like I feel like 137 is like kind of already an outlier, and that's still 3 points higher than Kelvin. And then we see, 142, 141, 144, 140, 142. Looks like this person ran a 20 lineup train. We'll ignore them. 144, 141. So it seems like getting your sim average score into this like 140 range is generally a good thing. You can overcome a certain amount of projected points like this Tiger user did at 137, but you can only overcome so much is, I think, something I've learned here. And I think 134 is just going to be a little bit too low to achieve some of these highest sim ROIs possible. Still allows you to be positive, but that would probably be the only thing I see here. So let me see what build they used. So this is important, right? Have their original builds and then they have swap builds, right? So always recommend late swapping before the afternoon window. And two things. One, the afternoon window ended up being really, really impactful because we saw huge performances from Kyron Williams had like a really good game as well. So afternoon slate ended up being super important. The other thing is that there were 5 games on the afternoon slate as opposed to last week. I think there was only 3. So, more games on the afternoon slate, more games in that split, even more reason to late swap, right? I think it was like 7 games early, 5 games late. It's almost half, right? So, pretty impactful thing to do is late swapping on Sundays that can sometimes go overlooked. So that part's really good. Let's use one of these pre-slate builds. We're not going to get into these swap builds. So let's try build 1 and see what this one looks like first. So 56 lineups. Let's see how they split this up. I'm not 100% sure what's going on here, so I don't want to speculate too much. It's possible that they were just looking at stuff after a certain amount of time. This could also be related to the big swap, small swap, where it's like, hey, these are, actually, I think this is it. These are contests under 25K entries, and then these are contests over 100,000 entries, and then they swapped it like that. So I would say that's why we're only seeing a subset selected. So this has nothing to do with filling or anything like that. This specifically has to do, in my opinion, with how they set up their swaps. So going to leave that alone. Increase minimum salary to 49.2 here. I think that's fine. Okay, so I actually think this is going to be the culprit to the lower sim average score, is that they have max exposures to some of the highest value players on the slate. Actually, like the top 3 value players on the slate. So this is something that can happen, right? This is an effect that you can have here, where if we sort by value, highest value, Jordan Mason, Zach Charbonnet, Alvin Kamara. Now, this user comes in and sets max exposure to Mason, 55%, max exposure to Charbonnet, 40%, max exposure to Kamara, 45%. So basically saying I'm okay with a very small amount of leverage on all 3 of them. Two things happened here, right? Number one is Mason underperforms, comes in at like half his projection. Charbonnet, gosh, this has to be like a 75 percentile outcome. Yeah, 75th percentile, like slightly under that. So, not groundbreaking. Kamara comes in under his projection almost by half as well, like 10 points under. And I say this to say 2 things. Number one, I am like very positive this is why the sim average score is lower, because in my builds, at least, where I had these guys, like, Sabersim was jamming them in because they're so much, you get a lot of projection for, the salary being used, right? A lot of bang for your buck. So when you limit that, you're ultimately lowering the projected score of your lineups because you're limiting projected points getting into them. So I feel like you should almost, if you're going to do this, you should be prepared to have a lower sim average score and possibly just like take the sim ROI post contest sims with a grain of salt because you're taking this stand. And it's almost more important for your own process sake to track whether or not you are right in your decision-making process here, or if you are wrong. So like having a high or low post-contest sim, I don't know how much you learn from that, but coming in here and saying, was I correct? And why was I correct? And what research led me to my conclusion for the adjustments that I made here is a more important question to, one, ask yourself, and two, get an answer to, because then that'll help you determine, should I do this again in the future or should I not do this again in the future? And if you can answer that question, then it's okay to have a little bit lower sim ROI. So that's what I would really be thinking about, is like, hey, you know, why did I make this change? Where's the research coming from? Was I right? Should I continue to do this? And if you can answer that question, you know, that's going to be really, really important. So aside from, you know, kind of that, the user didn't do too much here, right? Made their adjustments. You know, I didn't see any filters, rules, lineup filters, sorted by contest, sim, ROI. So all in all, what we just went over is going to be the most important thing for this user to figure out. But they're still positive sim ROI. Contest selection looks really good. Playing a lot of slates looks really good. So really happy with what I'm seeing from Kelvin. But that is, you know, going to be Kelvin's $1 million question that they need to answer for themselves. So good stuff there. Going to move on here to B Redman. And let's get them up on the screen. Keep everything rolling. All right, almost got him up. And let's go back to yesterday, NFL main slate. All right. Screen is back up here. And we're going to jump over to the contest tab. All right. So mixing in a little bit of cash here. Not something we highly recommend over at SaberSim, just because we feel that, you know, it is easier to build strong cash lineups in 2024 DFS. And if you're not losing to the rake, you're probably turning a single-digit ROI profit. And we just feel like you can get a little bit better bang for your buck with your dollars being used in GPPs. So, you know, whether or not you want to play cash is up to you. Those are our opinions and recommendations as to why. But aside from that, let's jump into one of these contests. So let's go to the quarter. And let's let this contest load. All right. Hop over to users. B Redman here. 20 lineups. Filter for 20 entries. Sorted by sim ROI. So sim ROI here, 59%. That looks good, right? That kind of goes in hand. First thing I looked at here. Hey, what was their sim average score? 140.7. So, you know, we go from like 45%, 134.6 sim average score to 60% sim ROI, 140.7 sim average score. So those things kind of go hand in hand to me here. Average salary looks good. Uniqueness looks good. Don't think we're going to learn a ton more from this screen. So So it looks like this user possibly late swapped their 20 maxes in Saber Sim, and then maybe even hand swapped all of their single entries up to 3 maxes, which is okay if that's what you want to do. So let's jump into a build. Let's go to build 2. All right, what am I seeing? No lineup filters, no rules, no player pool filter, default min-max salary, pretty high uniques. I would just make sure that you're using some of these aggregate metrics, right? So I don't know, what the aggregate metrics were for the lineups you saved, which I see down here. Biggest things I would be wondering is, if you're using this max, median, minimum ROI aggregate metrics, make sure the minimum is positive, right? You don't want to be playing negative ROI lineups. And then just make sure that the uniques isn't having too big of an effect on your average, and that you're not sacrificing your, highest ROI lineups to get to a more diverse set. 5 just seems high. It might not have been. I'm not 100% sure. Other than that, let's see. Few minimum exposures. It's okay to have some opinions. I don't have a problem with those. And I see that they adjusted a wide receiver in the all tab. So nice to see them making that adjustment to Amon Ra here. So I think that's good. Other than that, I'm not really seeing anything. I think one thing that's important to note is that it doesn't look like they had any Mintermax exposures to Mason, Kamara, Charbonnet, even though they didn't end up that high over ownership. I don't know. Maybe it's like that flexibility or whatever it is, not limiting the building lineup process. But we saw the last user have those max exposure caps, lower sim average score. We see this person without those max exposure caps, higher sim average score. So important to note there. But all in all, I think that this is good stuff. I would reconsider the heavy cash game bankroll allocation would be the first thing that I would mention here. Post-contest sims and results looked really, really good. And then I would just make sure I'm being careful with my number of uniques and my aggregate metrics, watching those as I change that number. But all in all, good stuff here. Happy with what I'm seeing. And, they obviously had strong post-contest sim results. So good job, B. Redmond. All right. Next up, going to be AO Teo, and we will get them up on the screen. All right. And we will go back to the DK main slate. All right, let's pull them up. So, what do we have going on here? Okay, so good news. We see builds and we see late swap. So that's good. Making sure they're late swapping. That's what you like to see. So we see a balance here of single entries and 3 maxes. We do see that. I want to go by entries. No, I'm sorry. I want to go by how many lineups they had. So there's something funny going on with these single entries. I'm not like 100% sure what. So most of their contest selection is like really good here. And then you just see like a big jump to some of these like high dollar single entry contests. So I would just say be careful with these because it looks like you skipped the $5 single. They run like three $12 singles. They run at least two $27 singles. So, I would be entering basically all of those. I think they have a $15 three max, if I'm right. They might even have an $8 three max. So just always kind of working from like lowest entry fee to highest before putting, 20% of your bankroll allocation into a single lineup here, right? It's like $500 totals and fees. And, you have a $100 single entry. So just be a little bit careful with some of these. Outside of that, let's jump into a contest and review results. So we'll go with the quarter jukebox. Just to keep it consistent, get some cross-player analysis going on. And we're just waiting for this to load now. I think I clicked on something a little early and messed it up. So let's try again. I might have just slightly jumped the gun. All right. Contest looks like it's almost loaded. All right. This contest is giving us a little bit of trouble now. So one thing I did notice is that they entered one of these smaller mini maxes, like the 47K entries one. I think we should be able to view this because it's under 100,000. So let's try loading this up. See if we get lucky. All right. So what we're going to have to do, I'm going to have to reset this and see if we can get it back up. 1 second. Sometimes it's just querying a lot of information at once, which is okay. It happens. All right, let's try this one more time. Let's go back to main site. Oh, I'm logged in as the wrong user. My bad. All right. Almost back. All right. Bringing up the screen now. So let's try this one more time. And I do have a feeling this one's going to work. Fingers crossed. Close, 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 close. Come on. If this doesn't work, I might have to circle back tomorrow. Make sure I get this loaded up for the stream, and then you can be the first one in the queue. But not looking good. All right. I think we gave this our best shot here. So I am going to keep it rolling. I will catch up with you, and we will get you queued up for tomorrow's show. So in the meantime, we are going to move on to Spice, who also signed up today. So let's get Spice up. All right, all right. All right, getting the screen up. We're in as Spice. Going back to yesterday's main slate. Contest selection looks all right. Probably before the $12, I would consider the $5 single entry. I would consider, the $5 3 max, some of those other contests. So, just think about some of those as options here. But other than that, contest selection looks really good. And I'm actually curious about something. So we're going to see if we can do a 2-for-1 here. Maybe, possibly, I could bring AO up on the screen because I do have their DK username here. So let's stick with Spice real quick. So Spice, 20 entries. And great news with Spice, 72% sim ROI. And super interesting, sim average score is actually really low. So this is actually really interesting, right? I'm very curious what decisions were made here that led to the high sim ROI, but the low sim average score. Now, I think this is an example of, projection not being like an end all be all, because if that was the case, the highest projected person would have the highest sim average score. So, but I would also say that this is more the exception than the rule, right? It is going to be very hard to construct lineups in a way that achieves such a high score as Spice. So I don't want to encourage people to do that because it's very challenging, and there's a little bit, I don't want to say easy, but less resistant path to first there. So either way, let's see what Spice did to achieve such a high sim average score or such high sim ROI with a low sim average score. Very, very interesting. So first off, they late swapped, right? Very important. high minimum salary, 49.5. We have one rule to prevent running backs from the same team being in the same lineup. So use no more than one running back per team. I think that's fine. Used autofill. So one change I would make in autofill, right, is just, and maybe you did this on purpose, I don't know, just make sure you're putting the contests in the order that you want them filled. So like probably the only thing I would really recommend changing is like moving up the mini max, because it's like a 150K prize pool, but you have the three entry $1 above it. So like I would have put the mini max before the 3 max. Whether or not you want to put, you know, I would have probably made the play action like my second contest, since it's $1 million prize pool, above the $12 single entry. Maybe you're like, you know what, I want to prioritize the single entry, the high prize pool single entries first, with like your one entry in the milli, your $1 12 max. I think that's okay. I would definitely make the mini max change, and then the $1, the one entry $12 is up to you. So some notes there. Other than that, no min or max exposures here. Projection adjustment to Kamara, to Taylor, to Saquon. So Saquon, these adjustments to Taylor and Saquon, these are like, I actually think all of their projection adjustments actually. So this is kind of like a similar thread as like Kelvin, where these adjustments are very, very aggressive, right? Taking Saquon from 18.5 to 25 is like almost a 50% increase, which is a lot. And same thing for Taylor, like 6 points. Not as high, maybe 5 points here, but still really aggressive, right? Like 20 to 30% projection increase, and then dropping Alvin Kamara about like at least like 1.5 points. This user ended up being right on all three of these adjustments, and you know, really right on Saquon and Taylor. So this could be a case where, you know what, the Sims might tell one story as like your post contest, but are you making these adjustments and are they correct? The only other thing I would say is like, I think these adjustments are like really, really aggressive just due to the size. You know, if I'm making projection adjustments, I'm more comfortable staying like 10-ish%, or if you want to use like 1 to 2 points max, you know, as like a whole number or something like that, depending on what the original projection is. Because, you know, bumping like in basketball, like it's easy to say like 10 to 20% until you're playing Nikola Jokic and he's, you know, projected for 70 points. Like, are you going to give him a 14-point increase, right? Which is like 20%. So being a little bit careful with like those outlier scenarios. So I would just be tracking this, making sure you're okay with this, making sure you agree. You know, these are 3 running backs, right? So by boosting them or by altering them, you know, boosting Barkley and Taylor, well, you're just taking up positions that Mason takes, that Charbonnet takes, right? So it's like again, it's okay to have a lower same average score, still graded out well. You know, are your adjustments good? Are they working? Where do they come from? And keeping that process going. So very, very similar to what we saw before. Other than that, no quarterback over 17% exposed. This is pretty interesting. I'm not like 100% sure. This is a very good way to get spread out, right? This is a very strong way to say, hey, I want to get exposure to all quarterbacks. By limiting them so heavily, you are just naturally going to get spread out. You might end up with lower stacks, right? So like in the pool exposure, no QB stacks is like fourth highest. We even see some QB plus 0 with a bring back. So, you know, be careful with the effect that this has. It looks like you did, right? You're like, hey, I'm not going to play any of the no QB stacks. Those are in 0% of your exposure here. But just be aware of the effects that those things can have. But other than that, happy with what I'm seeing. Strong sim ROI. So this is all good stuff. Good job, Spice. All right. So I do want to try something. And I should have done this before going to the build, but I didn't. But we'll try again here anyways. So if I can review the results, if the quarter jukebox pulls back up for me here, I'm going to look at how Aoteo graded out. And then I'm going to jump back to just their build rather than trying to pull up the results that same way as before. So looks like we do have the users tab here. So I'm going to search Aoteo. Okay. 40% sim ROI. Average salary looks fine. Uniqueness, pretty good. Sim average score 138, right? Okay. So I'm going to write these down. So average salary 49,705. Sim ROI equals 40.6. Average dupes 0. Sim average score 138.15. All right, we got most of the information that we needed here. So let's jump back to their build. And just getting them up on the screen. Hopping back to the main slate. All right. So we're back with Aoteo. I think we're supposed to be. Try one more time. All right, bring them back on screen. So we're back. We have their sim ROI metrics from the quarter jukebox. So good news is they are swapping here, right? So let's go back to an original build. All right. So default minimax salary. Not seeing any filters, not seeing any rules, not seeing any lineup filters. Seeing ROI, target contest ROI, using autofill, sorting by prize pool. Sorting by prize pool looks good. Car, so getting to a lot of like Saint stacks, Gino, Henry, Purdy. Zamir White, Taylor Swift, just like matching ownership on some of these lower guys. So a lot of these I don't mind, right? And it's because the minimum exposures aren't like out of this world. They're basically like matching ownership where it's like, hey, this player, maybe they're not popping up a lot. I kind of, have some intuition or research or something that they're going to do good. I'm not going to jam them into my lineups, but I just want to make sure these players don't beat me. So I want to at least match the rate that the field's going to be playing them and try and get leverage somewhere else, right? So I think that's cool. I would be tracking these, obviously, like, hey, if you're going to be putting minimum exposures to players, do they actually perform better? And, these two did, right? I mean, hey, like Henry and Purdy had good games, right? But then you go and look like, okay, Shaheed had 0 points, Carr had like half his projection. Olave finished like around a little above his projection. So just keeping a record, fact checking yourself almost, trying to be objective in your grading process and just say, hey, am I actually helping my lineups more, or am I hurting my lineups, and just, getting clear on what's going on there. But I do think it's okay to have opinions. So I will say that. And other than that, the only other thing I might mention is, don't be afraid to use some mini uniques for especially your larger entry contests. I would say, for like the mini max, right? Like 150, just like the top, try and increase it a little bit, right? You don't want mini uniques for your single entries. Those are all going to stay at 1. But all these 20s, 35, 150s, I would be trying to get some uniqueness and some diversification in these. So that would be the other recommendation I'd make. But overall, good stuff here, and still trending in a positive direction with the positive sim ROI. So can't be upset about that. All right. Think we're going to call it there. I do have 2 people that are signed up that I'm going to carry over into tomorrow's show. So Mr. CL and Sauce are going to be the first 2 up tomorrow. If anybody's tuning in and likes this content, want to sign up for a future show so I could do this for you, all you need to do, drop your DK username in the Office Hours channel in our Discord server. And if you do that, that will give me everything I need to pull you up on screen. So a couple long shows here. Appreciate all the Monday morning or Monday show questions here. And I know there's plenty to talk about and people want to review, which I think is great. So this show, we'll have plenty of time this week to catch up with everybody. So thank you guys for tuning in. And until tomorrow, take care. Good luck. I'll see you all. Thanks. Bye.